I have a confession. I struggle with the language of trauma. Diane Million in Therapeutic Nations traces a journey of dealing with, quote, the Indian problem, beginning with enemy, which has often been attributed to something as inherently deficient in us. Duncan Campbell Scott, when he advocated for his bill for residential schools, said, "I want to get rid of the Indian problem. I do not think, as a matter of fact, that this country ought to continually protect a class of people who are able to stand alone. That is my whole point. The object is to continue until there is not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the body politic. And there's no Indian question, no Indian department, and that is the whole object of this bill." It was our inability to adapt rather than recognize the impact of the Indian Act, the theft of the land, or the destruction of cultures. Enemy. Something wrong with us and our ability to adapt. Then the language of victimology came along, which was influenced by the feminist movement when the private life of home became more public and justice was being sought for abuses. Survivors of residential schools began to speak out about the atrocities they experienced for the first time. We have been victimized, and colonists are the perpetrators. Both of these are based on an individual framework, however, and more recently the language of trauma, especially historical trauma, has allowed us to argue that our entire communities have been traumatized by colonialism. We recognize that there is a whole system that it has impacted generations. And as Indigenous people, we often talk about the seventh generation principle. Those things that have gone on for 3 generations previous to us. The generation that we are currently in, and the 3 generations to follow. The reality of intergenerational trauma is evident, but it is not who we are. It does not define us. Interestingly, even in our theology, the songs that we sing within church often dictates how we process the experience that we've been through. May your troubles show that you need God. The impact of colonization continues to echo those words. The troubles that you experience point you to God. From the onset, the colonizer has been the one to define us. Through the names they gave us, through the Indian Act, they define who qualifies to be an Indian or not. Through their research in our communities, through their histories, through their assimilationist practices. But we are not a problem to be solved. We are not a sickness to be cured. We are not an evil to be eradicated. But we do exist. We are here. We are resilient. We are capable. We do belong. We are the beloved of the Creator. This struggle, however, with language and the neo-notions of healing, self-determination, and polity is that they leave the colonial power relations in place. Until these are dismantled, Western culture will continue to live out their woundedness on us. And so we share our stories, not for our healing, but for your healing. The medicine wheel within Indigenous nations is a picture of all directions, of all nations, of all colors of people coming together. And within the church, we have sadly been underrepresented as the red peoples. Only 2% of Indigenous peoples are a part of the church, despite over 500 years of mission efforts. And until we are brought into the church, until we are allowed to be an active voice within the church, there will be no healing. We share our stories as gifts, not because we're victims. We believe in reciprocity, and so we share our gifts with you. Our healing is asset-based. We acknowledge the strength of our communities, our teachings, our traditions, our spirituality. Healing is not about pathology. It's about relationship and interconnectedness. And community is integral to this. Not only our home communities, but those communities who journey with us in this faith and healing journey. Personally, I want to give a huge shout out to the NAITS community. Without them, in my personal journey, I would not be where I am today. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with NAITS, I know we had quite a few of us here represented. I know there are still a few. Some had to take their plane and leave early this morning. But NAITS is part of Indigenous Pathways, and I'm the chair of the board for that. And without that community of Indigenous peoples coming together, supporting one another, working through theology together, the church will not experience healing. So I encourage you all to come to NAITS.